The British, as you know, were the top dogs in maritime trade and colonies in the 19th century, but one place they never managed to have a large presence in is South America. But it wasn't for lack of trying. In this video, I'll be explaining the history of why the English failed to take a hold of part of this massive landmass. But before we begin, I have to give you all a bit of context on how the colonization of South America unfolded. After Columbus landed in modern-day Bahamas, it kick-started a race to see who would own what in this new continent that would later be named America. This race was mainly between the two Iberian nations, Portugal and Spain, Spain being the Kingdom of Castile at this time. This treaty, certified by Pope Alexander VI, stated that Portugal would have the right to claim any land eastward of this line, and Spain the right to claim any land west of this line. This is why you do not see Spanish colonies in Africa, because they quote-unquote weren't allowed to do so. With the treaty being set, Spain went all out in colonizing the new land, and managed to take control of about half of South America, the other half going to Portugal. The British, not being very friendly with the papacy at the time, didn't care too much about that agreement, and set their sights on Virginia, which had next to no Spanish presence, even though it lied westward of the line. There they established their first colony in the New World in 1606. After the American Revolution of 1776, the English were kicked out of a large part of their empire, leaving them with little presence in North America. The few remaining colonies in British control were either in the Caribbean or the frigid north of the continent. They were now hungry for land, and they wanted somewhere warmer, so they could feed their booming populations back in Europe. They set their sights on the then Spanish viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata, which comprised modern-day Argentina, Bolivia, Uruguay, and most of Paraguay. The British had interest in the region since 1711, when John Pullen stated that the Rio de la Plata basin was the best place in the world for a British colonial trading base, mainly because of the River Plate, which has a huge drainage basin that is the second largest basin in the continent, and the seventh largest in the world. By 1780, the British had greenlit an operation that aimed to take control of Spanish South America. The English thought that it would be easy to take control of the viceroyalty, since the Spanish were under the influence of Napoleon, and the ongoing Anglo-Spanish War that started in 1796 had significantly weakened them. The invasion came in two parts. The first one happened in 1806, the second happened a year later, in 1807. The British had their eyes set on all of Spanish South America, not only in the River Plate. In 1796, they made a plan that would require 4,000 soldiers and 1,500 cavalry to take the city and the capital of the viceroyalty, Buenos Aires. From there, they will move into the interior and over the Andes to take Chile. After taking Chile, they intended to move to warfare on the sea to take control of Peru and Ecuador. Feeling confident after they had taken the Cape of Good Hope from the Dutch in South Africa in 1806, Admiral Holmriggs Popham of the British Navy received orders to patrol the eastern coast of South America in order to spot ships going to aid the Dutch in their battle. Popham, seeing an opportunity, decided he would move his ships to the mouth of the River Plate in an attempt to take the important port city of Buenos Aires with 1,668 soldiers. Rafael de Sobremonte, the viceroy of the colony, had requested reinforcements in order to defend the city, but the only help he got from his overlords were muskets and instructions on how to form a militia. Sobremonte was reluctant to give the local population weapons, and the best troops were stationed in Bolivia to guard the frontiers of the Native American leader Tupac Amaru II's revolt. Thinking that the British would strike Montevideo first since it was closer to the sea, he sent out the rest of the troops there, leaving Buenos Aires almost defenseless when the English arrived. They then proceeded to occupy the city on the 27th of June. After occupying the city, the British were met with lukewarm reception by the locals. Some were throwing feasts in their honors, and others were being antagonistic towards them. On the 4th of August 1806, Santiago de Liniers, a French-born naval officer that was serving under the Spanish crown, gathered 950 men to try and reconquest the city, and landed in Las Conchas, just north of Buenos Aires. Just 6 days later, he had taken control of the strategic points of Miserere and El Retiro, the north and west entrances to the city, and 4 days later, the British surrendered and returned the city to Spain. The 71st Regiment of Foot, which was under the control of Popham, lost both of their regimental colours during the combat. With high tensions and seeing a possible second British invasion of the area, militias were formed both by the Spanish and the local criollos. The second invasion took place just 6 months later on the dawn of February 2nd in 1807. The English attacked Montevideo first this time, overwhelming the 5,000 defenders stationed there by 3-1. The city walls were quickly breached and the English met heavy resistance from the defenders. By 5 a.m., the government had accepted General Kutumu's demand of unconditional surrender. Surprisingly, both sides lost about the same number of casualties, 600 men, but the British took 2,000 defenders as prisoners. On the 10th of May, Lieutenant John Wylot, arrived in Montevideo to take control of the British forces, which now totaled about 13,000, down from 15 because of casualties and sicknesses, to start the second part of this plan, the invasion of Buenos Aires. When Whitelock landed on the 1st of July, Liniers led a resistance against the invaders, but they were quickly overwhelmed by their opponent's superior numbers. At first, Whitelock did not try to enter the city, but instead demanded the city be surrendered twice. While the lieutenant was busy ordering the city to be surrendered itself, the mayor had given orders to fortify the town by digging trenches, fortifying the buildings, and raising fences. After 3 days, Whitelock decided to besiege the city without the protection artillery. The lieutenant had underestimated the importance of urban combat. They did not use conventional weapons, and since many of the city's inhabitants were now hungry for independence, almost everyone fought the invading force with anything they could find, from cooking pots to wine bottles to pouring boiling water and oil on their heads. Eventually, the locals overwhelmed the British. By the end of the second day of the battle, the English now controlled 2 neighborhoods in the city, Retiro and Residencia. This came at the cost of about 70 officers and 1,000 men either dead or injured. With his forces demoralized and with many officers dead, Whitelock proposed a 24-hour truce, which Liniers rejected and continued to rain artillery on them. Sometime later, with just under 3,000 casualties on the British side, the lieutenant signed an armistice with Liniers on the 12th of August 1807, ending the attempt to take over the River Plate by the British. The colony, after having defeated an invading force with little to no help from their masters, started to strive for independence alongside its other South American brothers to the north. And finally, in 1816, 9 years after the invasion had been repelled, Argentina declared its independence from Spain. After this loss, the British now only had one colony in South America, and the colony was the British Guiana, which they had taken from the Dutch 10 years prior, leaving South America with little to no English heritage. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video because there will be a lot more coming in the future. And if any of you have any idea of topics you want me to talk about, be sure to let me know in the comments.